Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. Please subscribe and hit the bell icon. He's just the first. 1923 begins the Yellowstone problem that would haunt the Duttons for 100 years. One line in 1923 Season 2's finale predicts the Dutton family's troubles for the next 100 years. It was a massive finale for 1923's characters with a mixed reception. Alexandra of Sussex, Julia Schläpfer, had a tragic ending in 1923 Season 2's finale, succumbing to complications of hypothermia after she refused to have her frostbitten limbs amputated. Spencer's Brandon Sklinner, wife, delivers her baby prematurely before she dies. Somewhat unbelievably, and despite her baby surviving, Alex dies in Spencer's arms. While it was a disappointing chapter for some of the Prohibition-era Duttons, the family's tactical war was a massive finish. While the conflict was long drawn out, the gunfights at the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch and the train station in Livingston were some of 1923's best final moments. Banner Creighton's Jerome Flynn story was particularly compelling, as the 1923 Season 1 villain undergoes a change of heart, trying to board a train to Oregon with his wife and son. Jacob Dutton, Harrison Ford, posted at the train station awaiting Spencer's arrival, stops the former sheep farmer's attempt to flee the ensuing conflict. In the exchange, Banner Creighton makes an ominous and starkly accurate prediction about the Dutton family's future. Moments before the train depot gunfight in 1923's finale breaks out, Banner Creighton predicts the Dutton family's future. During their conversation, Creighton tells Jacob Dutton that Donald Whitfield, Timothy Dalton, is just the first of many men who will try to take the Duttons' land. Whitfield began developing a winter resort in 1923 Season 2, where wealthy and average men alike could take their families to ski, hunt, and toboggan while they patronized the local restaurants and shops. Whitfield wants to build the attraction in Paradise Valley, situated on the Dutton family's ranch, adjacent to Yellowstone National Park, and the scheme is akin to future threats. Whitfield speaks of cross-country flights and airports when pitching his idea, proposing that the state capitalize on the tax revenue to be made from bringing tourists into Montana. Donald develops the idea after Creighton comes to him about taking the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch, with the mining tycoon promising to buy him an army. Initially, Whitfield just wanted the land for its minerals. However, after seeing some of his Norwegian miners skiing down the hillside, Whitfield shifts gears. Regardless, his plan was always to take the Yellowstone Ranch from the Dutton family, beginning a legacy that would last 100 years. Donald Whitfield is the first Yellowstone villain to come after the Duttons' land, but he isn't the last. Yellowstone screenwriter Taylor Sheridan builds the story for the original series around John Dutton, i.e. struggled to maintain his family's property, the largest contiguous ranch in the United States, with help from his kids, Beth, Kelly Riley, and Case, Luke Grimes. Yellowstone kicks off with Dan Jenkins, Danny Houston, buying an adjacent parcel of land, planning a high-end residential community where people from New York and California can kick back and relax in their vacation homes while enjoying Montana's resources, including its solitude. Malcolm, Neil McDonough, and Teal Beck, Terry Serpico, kill Dan Jenkins over his deal with Thomas Rainwater, Gil Birmingham, to build a casino at the gate of the Yellowstone National Park, taking out the Dutton family's enemy for their benefit. Still, the modern mission that Dan Jenkins established continues. Market Equities buys Jenkins Development, and under the leadership of executives like Ellis Steele, John Emmett Tracy, Rourke Morris, Josh Holloway, Will Hayes, Karen Pittman, and Caroline Warner, Jackie Weaver, the relentless pursuit to take ownership of the Yellowstone Ranch continues. Therefore, Banner was right that Whitfield was just the beginning. Despite countless threats, Beth and Case hold down the family's claim to the land, sometimes with help from Wes Bentley's Jamie Dutton, until Yellowstone Season 5's finale. John Dutton's Kevin Costner, son sells the Yellowstone Dutton Ranch to the Broken Rock tribe in the end, which ultimately neutralizes their fight to maintain its stewardship. While Beth had put up a pretty good fight, Market Equities was still vying for their claim of Paradise Valley, and Sarah Atwood, Dawn Olivieri, was intent on doing whatever it took, including ordering John Dutton's murder. Ultimately, the Duttons could have kept fighting if not for early morning fog like a ghost stitched from dust and stubbornness, the hooves of his horse silent against the frostbitten ground. Jacob Dutton didn't know it yet, not in full, but the war for Yellowstone had just begun. And he was just the first to fight, to bleed, and to shoulder a legacy so heavy it would bend the spine of every Dutton who came after. The year was 1923, and Montana wasn't just wild, it was wounded. The land still reeked of the ambitions of men who'd arrived with axes and greed, dreaming of railroads, copper mines, and cattle empires. And while the Duttons had carved their piece of heaven in the valley, the world beyond their fence lines was starting to howl. Money had a scent, and Yellowstone soil was soaked in it. Jacob Dutton had come west to save something. Maybe it was the Dutton name. Maybe it was the American dream. Maybe it was just himself. But standing on that sprawling ranch, watching the cold sun rise over 1,000 acres of untamed wilderness, he knew this much. Someone would try to take it. Not now, maybe, but soon, and then again, and again. Because Yellowstone wasn't land, it was legend. And legends demand blood. The enemies came like wolves, each one hungrier than the last. In 1923, they wore suits instead of war paint, but they were no less dangerous than the warriors who had once fought to keep this land sacred. Now, the new battle lines were drawn with deeds, taxes, and treaties, forged in courtrooms instead of canyons. Donald Whitfield was among the first to truly challenge Jacob, not just with threats or legal tricks, but with full-on war. A tycoon with teeth like steel and a heart that pulsed to the rhythm of empire. Whitfield represented something far more dangerous than a cattle rustler or a squatter. He represented the future. And the future didn't have room for families like the Duttons. Not the way they lived, not the way they loved the land more than profit. But Jacob stood, not because he wanted to fight, but because he didn't know how to surrender. His wife, Kara, wrote letters that should have been prayers. His nephews fought battles they didn't understand. And all the while, the land bore witness, silent and scared, aching from every boot that stomped across it, every fence that cut through it. Whitfield would fall, but he wouldn't be the last. Because the war for Yellowstone doesn't end when the villain dies. It mutates, evolves. It waits. By the time John Dutton Sr. took the reins, the scars had already begun to thicken into legend. He'd grown up with the smell of fire and the sound of gunshots embedded in his bones. Yellowstone had never been quiet, never been easy. His father had taught him that the land was both a gift and a sentence. You protect it, or you lose it. Simple as that. But it was never simple. The government came knocking. Developers came smiling. Even family turned on itself now and then. And as the decades rolled on, each Dutton found themselves fighting not just outsiders, but the very idea that the land could belong to anyone. Yellowstone was too wild to be owned, too ancient to be tamed. Still, they tried, and they paid. In 1997, another Dutton would fall in a ditch, alone, staring up at the stars as the ranch swallowed another soul. In 2018, gunshots would echo through pine trees and lodgepoles, the old battles repeating with new faces. Every time a Dutton died, it felt like the land mourned, and every time one rose, it felt like the land was testing them. Jacob had been the first to take that test. He hadn't passed it, no one does, not really, but he held the line long enough for the next Dutton to try, and then the next, and the next. By the time John Dutton IV rose to the governorship, the war for Yellowstone had twisted into something almost mythic. Laws had been bent, bodies buried, alliances forged in silence. But the burden remained. He wore a cowboy hat like a crown, his face carved with the same quiet pain his ancestors had carried. He knew he was a soldier in a war that didn't end. A war that would never end. And deep down, he understood the bitter truth. The Duttons don't win. They endure. Because winning means peace. And Yellowstone doesn't allow peace. It only allows survival. Jacob Dutton never saw what his fight would become. He never imagined casinos and airports and conservation groups masquerading as enemies. He never saw the betrayals or the backstabbings. But he knew the shape of the threat.